Back here on HQ, presented by FanDuel, we have an NFC showdown for Monday Night Football with the Lions and the Niners. Niners looking to play spoiler since they've already been eliminated from playoff contention. Meanwhile, the Lions are fighting to lock down that #1 seed in the NFC. However, that 1 seed in the NFC comes down to the final game of the regular season when the Lions host Minnesota. So does that change how Detroit is going to approach tonight's game? Let's dive into it with Kyle Long and Mike Renner. Gentlemen, the Lions fighting for that top seed, as mentioned, in the NFC. And we know the long list of injuries to superstars that they've been dealing with that has been piling up. And that 1 seed comes down to ultimately the Week 18 matchup. So, Kyle, I'll start with you. Should the Lions sit most of their starters? Do you think Dan Campbell would do that, given all of the injuries that they are dealing with?
Well, I think there's a situation that the Kansas City Chiefs are in, and then there's a situation that the Detroit Lions are in. And the Kansas City Chiefs, they've been there, done that in the postseason. But for the Detroit Lions, if I know Dan Campbell like I think I do, and I think I understand their culture pretty well from an outside perspective, they don't want to let their foot off the gas pedal, regardless of the injuries that have gone on around them. Sure, there could be some guys sitting, but there aren't many guys left for the Detroit Lions. One thing that they do have is momentum, culture, toughness, grit, all the things that Dan Campbell set out to instill in this team. I fully anticipate them to have that terrible taste in their mouth when they get into the stadium, which is where they eventually lost that NFC Championship game last year, up 3 possessions, which is just criminal, and they know it as well. So Dan Campbell, the Lions, they're going to show up and show out. The San Francisco 49ers, they're not getting after the quarterback at a great rate, so I don't think having Jared Goff back there is a big concern, particularly with their scheme with Ben Johnson and that offensive line. But anything can happen. My money's on the Detroit Lions showing up, and it's the Detroit Lions that we know and love this season.
Yeah, if there's any difference in how this team plays, it's that maybe Ben Johnson doesn't tip his hand on some plays he's got saved in that playbook. We might not get the stumble Ruski. We may not get the throwback to Penei Sewell, but they're all playing because while it isn't horribly meaningful, if they do tie in Week 18 with the Minnesota Vikings and they lose this game, the Vikings are the 1 seed. If they tie in Week 18 and they win this game, the Lions are the 1 seed. So there is some meaning to it still. And so because of that, I fully anticipate, echoing everything Kyle said, they're going to leave it all on the line here. They want revenge from that NFC title game a year ago.
Yeah, we know this Lions team. What are they going to, rip kneecaps off or bite them off and play with a little bit of a chip on their shoulder? That is the culture, right? So if we look at the NFC in general here, I know we talked about the Vikings, and it's all, for the most part, going to come down to that Week 18 matchup. But, Mike, I'll start with you. Who is the biggest threat? What team, I should say, poses the biggest threat to the Lions in terms of their playoff success, in your opinion?
I think it's the Vikings at this point. You watch what they just did to the Green Bay Packers team that's been red hot over the last month, and they just shut them down. I mean, an offense that no one seemed to have answers for, that really was doing anything they wanted. They didn't do anything. I mean, they couldn't convert a third down. I do think that this Vikings team, we all knew this defense was elite very early on this season. We didn't think the offense would be at that level with Sam Darnold at quarterback. We were all wrong. Sam Darnold's playing better than any other quarterback in the NFC North right now, and because of that, it's just a scary team come playoff time. And again, the biggest threat to the Lions is not getting home field advantage, is becoming the five seed in this playoffs and having to go on the road every single game. The Vikings stand firmly in their way next week.
Yeah, and Mike, I think it's important to point out that this Detroit Lions team on the defensive side, they're so banged up. We know that. We've written novels about it on our Push in the Pile podcast. But at the end of the day, they went against a Green Bay Packers defense that was decimated as well. I'm talking about the Minnesota Vikings here. And they dominated. I'm in full agreement with you as it pertains to the Vikings being the biggest threat. I think they're the biggest threat in the NFC. They're a complete football team. And there were questions about Sam Darnold, like you alluded to. And it was obvious that the guys in the locker room had believed in Sam Darnold far before we did. And we're starting to see the best play of his season come about at the most important time. They showered him with water bottles after the game. It was fantastic to see. And this Minnesota Vikings team, not only do they have a brilliant coaching staff and a scheme and a game plan, but they've got the Johnnies and Joes to execute those X's and O's.
Yeah, in the offseason, I'm not sure I would have predicted Sam Darnold being the quarterback to lead his team to the playoffs. And then we have Kirk Cousins, who's getting benched for a rookie. But that is the NFL and the unpredictability of it. Speaking of which, the Niners, this was the team that was the favorites to win the Super Bowl in the offseason. Of course, they've dealt with their fair share of injuries injuries. They've been eliminated from playoff contention. Mike, what do we have to look forward to for the Niners? Of course, we have to expect that, they're getting healthy, paying Brock Purdy. There's a lot to look forward to despite the fact that they're out of the playoffs this go around.
Yeah, I mean, they still are a very talented football team. Their core is coming back next year. But I think in this game, you're really seeing the difference in team building strategies come back to haunt this 49ers team. When you run the stars and scrubs method that the Rams kind of popularized, the 49ers are now implementing, your stars better be healthy. Their stars weren't healthy this year. We're seeing with the Detroit Lions, a lot of their stars aren't healthy, but they built through the draft. They built through sound decision-making year after year after year. And so when those stars go down, they have quality backups that they just drafted in the second, third round, that sort of thing. So we're really seeing that on full display with the success of both those teams and how they're able to deal with injuries. But for the 49ers to just stay healthy next year, they're right back atop the NFC.
Yeah, and I think it all really is dependent upon the health of Christian McCaffrey. He makes everything in that offense so much better. It's like, everybody loves a bowl of vanilla ice cream, but you get that hot fudge on there, man, and it's so good. That's Christian McCaffrey to that offense. And without it, you're just like, hey, vanilla ice cream is pretty good. Brock Purdy has done pretty darn good. He's earned his contract. We've obviously got some stars on the outside, some guys who can get home on the defensive front. But at the end of the day, Christian McCaffrey ties it all together, so the health of him moving forward is going to be big time. And I think the big issue this year are the things that Mike alluded to. It's the injuries. It's the contract disputes during the preseason that inevitably ended up with Brandon Ayuk getting hurt in the game. Trent Williams flying in on a private jet about 24 hours before the first week of practice began. There's a lot of distractions in that building, but moving forward, that core should be able to keep their heads above water in Santa Clara.
Gentlemen, let's get into the picks. The Lions are 3.5-point favorites. Kyle, a little birdie, a.k.a. Tommy Tran, told me that the Lions were your best bet on the pick show. So, of course, you're going with the Lions. Tell us more about that pick.
Yeah, I'm going to go with the Lions. I just firmly believe in that culture. I think that culture travels as well as the running game, as well as great protection, as well as a beautifully schemed offense, and that's what they have. In addition to that, they've got a really good defensive coordinator there in Detroit, and I think that travels as well. Dan Campbell has instilled an unflappable culture where they don't blink in Detroit, and I think that it will travel. I just remember the NFC Championship. They had their regrets there. They won't leave Northern California with regrets again.
Yeah, my play, I like the over. I'm not picking a side on this one. I do think with the Lions not having that much to play for, being favorites on the road, I don't love it, but I do love the over because this decimated Lions defense provides opportunities for opposing quarterbacks at this point. We saw Caleb Williams go for over 300 yards. We saw the Bills score 48 points on him. We saw the Packers score 31. There will be points on the scoreboard in this game. So 50.5, not nearly high enough. This one's going to go maybe into the 60s.
All right, it is time for our same game parlay presented by FanDuel. The three of us are going to give each leg for a parlay. We also have a producer pick as well. Kyle, kick us off. What is your leg of the parlay?
Whatever the number is for Jared Goff passing yards, go over. Just go over. Just go over.
Simple analysis. We love that. Mike, what is your leg of the parlay?
I'm going to go Ricky Pearsall, their first-round pick at wide receiver, who's kind of been an afterthought in the offense. I'm going to go his over. 23.5. It's super low. And now that they're completely out of it, they're going to want to give these young guys a run, right? See what they got in them. So I think they're going to feature him tonight because of that. Over 23.5 yards.
All right, a lot of over.
Jack, let me cut you off here. You want some analysis?
I do.
Did you hear Mike Renner, one of the brightest minds in football? He just said it's going to get Pete Prisco loose. They're going to score 60 points maybe. And if that's the case, Ben Johnson's going to press the Jared Goff button a couple times. And man, oh man, can they catch and run when he's got that thing dialed in. San Francisco doesn't get after the quarterback very well. It's going to provide a clean dish for Jared Goff. We all like clean dishes. People say I look like Mr. Clean. I appreciate a clean dish. So Jared Goff over yards.
Perfect. And I love the Pete Prisco imitation sprinkled in that analysis as well. We have a lot of overs in this parlay. To both of y'all's point, this Lions defense is really decimated. We've seen opposing quarterbacks and teams score a lot of points. I'm going to go with Brock Purdy over his passing yards. And then if we get to our producer pick, they have Jahmyr Gibbs anytime touchdown.
It's going to be fun.
Yeah, going to be fun. Kyle, Mike, we certainly appreciate it. Getting a look and just recapping our same game parlay presented by FanDuel. Again, Mike is going with Ricky Pearsall over his receiving yards. I'm going to go with Brock Purdy over his passing yards. Kyle's going with Jared Goff over his passing yards. And our producer picked Jahmyr Gibbs anytime touchdown. The odds plus 555.
You get an over. You get an over.
Everyone's getting an over.
You get an over.
And we'll have to see. I like plus 555. I feel like that sounds good. And the playoffs, of course, almost here. No better time to get in on the NFL action than now on FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. New FanDuel customers can get $250 in bonus bets if your first $5 bet wins. Download the FanDuel Sportsbook app today and make every moment more. And a reminder, you can hear Kyle Long and Mike Renner on their podcast, Pushing the Pile. You can watch right now by scanning that QR code or listen, watch wherever you get your shows, whether that's on YouTube, Spotify, wherever you get your favorite podcasts.